Uh, as we, as I recovered from the West Nile virus and discovered that there was the work that I had done in all my life in pharmaceutical sales training on every major therapeutic category, globally, in every mode, medium, method of instruction, that in fact in the hospital, it was the hands-on care of the physical therapist that kept me alive, but there was no magic bullet. I didn't have a single condition. I had a multi-dimensional, multifactorial, multivariable that turned out to be nothing you could really say, well, he had diabetes or he had heart disease. I was a pretty healthy guy, but I was obese, and I had many problems. And the thing that we want to talk about today, I was particularly excited about the designing for healthy habits. And
so to me, a lot of problems that we call problems are design related. And I think the other thing to note is that 70% maybe of our healthcare costs are lifestyle related. And
well, the big idea, let's go to the next slide, that I got was that when I realized how much I had to do to take personal responsibility that I hadn't taken all my life, that I was a self-abuser and not even known that. At the point that I weighed 250 pounds. Now I weigh 195.
I would say that's a hard visual.
I've got it.
Yeah, right. Because you
Yeah.
And even at 6'3", I could play a pretty damn good game of tennis.
Yeah, right.
But by realizing what I already had known, that it wasn't just a single pill for every ill, a single drug for every bug, a drill for to get something carved out of you.
Yeah.
That the variability of as the pharmaceutical industry says, try diet and exercise. And then if that doesn't cure your insulin resistance, we have a pill for it. So the diet and exercise turns out to be, the code word seems to be lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle is not just diet and exercise, but it's sleeping.
Yeah.
It's meditating. It's exercise. It's vacationing and having hobbies and working and learning and planning and traveling and using technology and spending your money properly and not getting stressed out because you can't pay your healthcare bills.
Amen.
As well as taking care of all your organic issues.
Yep.
And then dealing with how you look and feel every day is a big part of your quality of life. And when I got in the hospital and realized I couldn't speak because I was pegged and trached and near death for 400 days, you really get to know yourself. So the cornerstone turned out to be, my own personal experience, was nutrition was the most important, because I had encephalitis, poliomyelitis, respiratory failure, and that I wasn't able to exercise to lose weight.
Right.
That in fact, so I started going out to Dr. Google and Dr. Internet and Dr. Kindle, and I found that in spite of the digital dismissal of these non-randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trials and just anecdotal advice, but there was a lot of good advice out there, but it was hard to sort it out.
Curate, is that the word we use?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to curate. It's hard to have it.
Did that ring a bell with you?
Yeah.
So, in short, being a research instructional guy with Dr. Skinner, B.S. Skinner, in the 60s, and the Jerome Bruner, cognitive psychologist, and founding the Whole Brain Corporation in 1983, I learned that there were multiple schools of psychology. And psychology was a very immature science that did not, it wasn't like physics that was pretty agreed upon in terms of the thing.
Come a long way now, though, I think.
But it's coming a long way, and with cognitive science and neuroscience, it's really accelerating.
Yeah.
And so it's a very fertile field that everyone's digging into. And I realized that the chronic illness of the world, that a big part of it could be done by employees, patients, families, and yet, go to the next slide. And so I had thought about the Manhattan Project as something that my wife's grandfather did at Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Sure.
And there's a big project, but it had a lot of bad connotations. And then we thought about the moonshot, the Apollo 13. And that had a more positive ring to it. But it took even more money than the Manhattan Project and more people, and caught the world's attention. So now they think of moonshot projects as big deal, big science, big paradigm shifting endeavors. And so, because I had been focusing on, with Skinner, the behavior with Skinner and with my brain work and my mind work, when I wound up looking at the behavior of the whole brain, the extended mind, and all the bodily behavior, and what became very clear to me was that after reading things like Ray Kurzweil and others, that the technology had reverse engineered the human brain, mind, and body and come up with the computer, the operating system, and the apps. And now artificial intelligence is going so fast you couldn't stop it. And as you, in your book, talk about how the artificial intelligence is not got the right balance between what people do and the care they give and the high tech and the high touch.
So I spent the morning talking with Google because I'm doing a joint presentation with them later in October. And the topic was machine learning, but the asset that they have is incredibly detailed information about everyone.
Right.
And the challenge is how to use that in a way that will affect, in this case, sales. But here it's how it will affect behavior. And I insisted that they put into this presentation a phrase, which was that adults learn best when at the moment they need something, they can grab it. And if you try and give them information before they need it, it's just, it's the 50%. It's just white noise. It goes away. But, but in a moment when you need it, if you can then provide the right information, then you make the link, right? And so...
I think need it and want it, though.
Yes.
Just educating people is not.
No, that's exactly right.
There has to be a motivation.
And want was part of that was part of that framework. We want to deliver information at the exact right moment when they want it. And actually, preferably, a few minutes before they even know. Okay? And so I'm working deeply in that problem from a marketing perspective and selling product. here's an opportunity to think about how to do that
It's analogous.
as,
Yeah.
a,
It's
as a
not a
motivational
perfect
tool.
analogy because, at least in my experience, and the reason is most people don't want to be reminded. So most people don't, it's a negative thing. Like it's a positive thing to buy a new perfume or something, right? Push the buy button, and then you feel rewarded. But to say you've got to check your blood sugar, you've got to check your finger, you've got to remind you to take your medicine. Those are all kind of have negative connotations. So I just think it's a little harder.
It's different.
The advantage that my companies over the last 50 years have had is that we knew how to structure and sequence, organize and categorize information to get it in a form that people could remember it and use it and learn it. Not as just general education, but as specific training that met a specific need and want at the time.
Yeah.
What I found was that the frameworks that we used in the 50s and 60s were one-dimensional. They were linear programming.
Okay.
Technology and B.F. Skinner, program instruction.
Right.
And we led that with the pharmaceutical industry. In the 80s, it became two-dimensional. It was the screen, and you had real estate in two dimensions, so you could map out up and down and left and right, and that gave you more flexibility. But there was no real, it was all done by metaphors. There was no real common denominator metaphor that allowed you to frame it so that when you looked at a Google screen or a Facebook screen or an Apple screen or an Amazon screen that you felt had been here before, you almost have to start from scratch to learn how to solve the problem. So in the 80s, I was a founder of the Whole Brain Corporation.
Yeah.
And they had a two-dimensional framework, left and right, Roger Sperry, limbic and cerebral, guy named McLean, and that we call the whole brain, but it wasn't the whole brain. It was just a slice of left, right, up and down.
Right.
And so I'm putting together this linear B.F. Skinner and Ned Herman with his left and right.
Yeah.
And that got very well adopted at Harvard Business School. We went to Singapore, changed the culture of Singapore, adopted by several 100,000 people at IBM. And what was always missing was how to have a common framework that would integrate these different dimensions. And what I found in the last 2 or 3 years, if you use the whole brain as a metaphor to get a visual representation of some architecture, you could create an architecture that would standardize, systematize, simplify the framework that you could use, and then people could learn one step at a time, just when they needed it. But it was the key really is what you've got the conference coming up to, design.
Yes.
So I found that my illness and recovery, that I could share what I was doing using these frameworks. Let's go to the next slide. And we've got the Whole Brain Foundation, which is a 501c3 and doing research, and that's where I've been investing my capital. But we now have a company, Whole Systems International Corporation, which is a spinoff and an organic part of a third company called DBLS Whole Systems, which is doing contract work for the pharmaceutical industry. They're booming. They're the leading in the field, and they're producing a lot of profit, a lot of capital, a lot of capability to launch pharmaceutical products. So the synergy we see, let's go to the next slide, is to apply what I learned about patients in the hospital, which costs over $1 million to keep me alive,
Yeah.
and then let the physical therapist and my own wits to survive it. And I realized that the training that we were doing with the pharmaceutical sales rep, that I could do this, use the key technology was the training technology, not the pill.
Right.
And you couldn't make much money on the training technology. But it's now clear to me that for about $1,000 a family and a patient, you can create training on an annual basis that will enable employees at home to take on a much more responsibility and not count completely on the healthcare system, which is running out of people. And the technology that we're bringing to the high cost and low value of treatment can be reversed with low cost and high value of prevention with learning for personal responsibility and competency. What do you think about that?
I agree. It's anytime you get a curve like that, it can't be taken in isolation. And so whoever's got the $1 million wants to hold on to it.
Yeah.
Right.
They sure do.
So, one of the phrases I like is in I think it's true in any industry, but in healthcare, a dollar saved is a dollar of someone's income lost. And so, whenever you come up with these, we can do it in home cheaper and better. I have no doubt you can, but there's so many people that will resurrect barriers to keep you from getting there because they're happy to do it for more money.
They'll find a way to say it's too tall, it's too short, it's too fat, it's too thin, it's too expensive, it's too cheap. And I don't think it would be a good idea because it hasn't gotten a randomized clinical trial at $2.5 billion.
It's all that doesn't mean I'm not enthusiastic. I am. It's just for 25 years I've seen that evolve.
And so the economics and the barriers that you talked about, you know how fully entrenched they are.
Yeah.
How do you see it, Irma?
Well, obviously, talking from a patient and a patient advocate perspective, and somebody who's become a real champion of prevention, I am extremely excited about this approach. But actually, from technology perspective, I know that these systems and these approaches can be done. But as Dr. Kvedar said, from the institutional perspective and from the whole system, health system, health ecosystem, really, and the behavior change at the level of the system and even at the level of individuals is a very hard barrier to overcome. I don't think you're saying it's impossible, but it's very, very difficult.
It's almost like you want to choose one thing to, focus is usually a good thing. So do we want to improve quality of life, and in doing so, your sales target becomes health plans and employers because they pay for so much of the health. And then what happens is we get dragged kicking and screaming. Example, these days is you have all these shadow, as you all know, telehealth networks coming up where employer X through health plan Y contracts with American Well or Teladoc or one of those, and they have telehealth visits for their employees, but it's not connected to their doctor because their doctor isn't participating. So that's one sort of way you can see this evolving. And in fact, I think that's an interesting future to contemplate. What if we build up these networks and what we consider today mainstream standard physicians have taken more and more of a back seat. I think that's interesting. Because right now, physician adoption is about 15-16%.
What's that phrase? Physician adopt.
But for telehealth,
Okay.
it's about 15 to 16%. It's booming everywhere else. It's booming in health plans. It's a stay-in business application. Consumers all over it. Mental health is the one exception, about 45%. But generally, most doctors in offices and outpatient settings have nothing to do with it. So, do we cajole them in somehow and deal with this problem because they're making a fine living the old way? Or do we just start to go around them until they feel the pain?
Let me,
Just one question, isn't part of motivation for some physicians to actually participate in telehealth is their own lifestyle? And
Again,
how
it's-
they can work from home?
Sure. Yeah, that's that is true. I think that's a very small cohort.
But your point is well taken, both of you, and that is to find a pathway in which the interested corporation or entity wants and is motivated to drive those costs down and to increase the health of their
I mean, almost
employees.
every employer will say they want to lower costs. But then when you get into the nitty gritty of saying, well, which doctors are going to be in your network, and are you going to exclude a place like Mass General, and or bring in what we just brought in, and I mean no disrespect to them, but our health plan, which insures all of us, brought in WellTalk. I don't know if you've seen their solution, but it's their wellness program. They're in the market and they're doing well, but what they sell is like very unimaginable.
well,
So
what,
everything kind of gets boiled down, or dumbed down.
without looking at the specific architecture, the framework that we've built will allow people to figure out what the causes are, and not just the symptoms, to understand how they can solve the problem, and offers a real tool and resources for learning these solutions.
Which is
Let's
great.
go to the next one. So we call this invention the whole system. And
That's
it
smart.
ties in with the whole connected health system or the connected health conference.
Yeah.
But we want to look at it holistically, and that's the name of our company and the name of our product. And maybe we sold it from you, or maybe you sold it from us.
There's no stealing, they're just words. Yeah. I don't
Great
think
minds
it's
think alike,
sold.
remember
Yeah,
that?
there you go.
But the tool, what we found is that even though I found some approaches to diet and exercise that I found particularly good for me, it's more having a methodology that will be able to be crowdsourced, so that you can compare anecdotal evidence of what people are actually doing and not just rely on the randomized clinical trial as the only Western medicine approach.
What's referred to as the real-world evidence, right?
Real world evidence, but is poo-pooed because it's only anecdotal.
There's another side to that, though. It's not just the real-world evidence. It's finding patterns from other people that have worked for them in which those people are similar to you.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to find how to motivate people and connect them. And I have this lifestyle. Oh, and this work, maybe that would work for me, right? So you're not having to invent it yourself.
Yeah.
And so that crowdsourcing gives you a large enough cohort that aligns with who you are, that it could be helpful in that motivation issue and in the delivery of the right information.
That's a good one.
And it would be iterative approach to find out which of the parameters you use to compare people, which of them are actually valid and important as a measure of similar to.
Right, and we will also be watching and help suggest other things that might be useful that you may not have thought of.
Right.
Right, that's where Google comes in, or machine learning, or other applied technologies.
Over the last 6 years, bootstrapping, trying this out, doing the research, I've done 9 boot camps for 6 months. And I got the boot camp idea from Spalding, Cambridge, because they put me in a boot camp. And they said, you're going to go into a boot camp if you're willing to do it. I'd been in the Army, and I was expecting a drill sergeant and a whole bunch of people doing calisthenics. Well, I was the only one in the boot camp, and it was very intensive. And after a while, I said, take me out, coach. I can't do this anymore. And the team at Spalding, particularly one woman, Sandra, said, Charlie, it's a trick. Once you get out of the boot camp, they'll never let you back in. You've got to pay the price. And she gave me the kind of tough love that put the little lead in my spine.
I love that.
So I've tried it on obesity. I've tried it on end-stage renal disease. I've tried it on stroke, on brain aneurysms. And the results have been astonishing. But in order to share what I've done, let's go to the next slide. You need an economic model,
Yes, sir.
a business model that would meet the criteria that maybe Obamacare isn't meeting, or Trump care, for God's sakes,
Yeah.
and have something that was basically free for the patient and family, that was paid for by corporations and government in their own self-interest. It was a general wellness service that didn't require FDA approval, that had recurring revenue, so kind of each one teach one, so that as you train one group, the next group, people who got work, who took the course, could be the teachers for the next group.
Yeah.
And so it could spread virally, and by tying it in with the insurance, with the government, you could find a way to harvest crowd thinking and learning. You could get away so that instead of replacing the existing insurance, you could have a new alternative, which would be focused on prevention, and everyone would be in favor of it, because it's hard to be against apple pie and motherhood.
That's right, yeah.
So we think we've found a business model that will, like a Trojan horse, be able to attack the powers that be. So that we can provide health care with high value, low cost, and fast time. What do you think of that?
Like Trojan horse.
I like it.
You don't even know it's good for you.
Let's go to the next slide. Our approach to getting to the market is that we have enormous expertise in our company in pharmaceutical sales training, and particularly selling skills.
Right.
Going back to 1961, when I started with Francis Becker at Basic Systems, we built with Pfizer a selling skills course called Persuasion Skills. That I became the product manager for the course after we sold the company to Xerox. And Joe Wilson, I was on the board with him, said to the Wall Street, well, why did you acquire these people? They didn't have any profits, no real product. I said, well, we acquired them for the brains. Back when brains were a 4-letter word, according to or at least the mind was a 4-letter word. So the selling skills course that we built with our director, Gene Colucci, and our team turned into the widest selling skills course in the world, called Professional Selling Skills. I got to a point where it could do $200 million in revenue in that company, which Xerox had, and then it became Learning International, then achieved a lot of mergers and spin-offs and stuff in the training industry. But the selling skills has a similar configuration to what we are now looking at as personal lifestyle skills. The same, except we now have a technological advance to build a framework that's three-dimensional and whole brain and has much more power. So we think that by going to the pharmaceutical industry to train their own employees, so on wellness, so it doesn't need FDA approval, and it doesn't interfere with that they will get to demonstrate for their own employees that wellness works.
Yeah.
That sound good?
I think I need the sales training folks.
So,
Back to that.
but there are also opportunities to go beyond the pharmaceutical, and particularly with your upcoming conference in insurers, in healthcare providers of all stripes. So Irma is going to help us lead the charge into that sales and marketing for this vast opportunity. Let's go to the next slide.
I'm going to interrupt for a moment, but the model is the same, that we want to find a partner in which we can deliver the service and value to their own employees, to their benefit, to their financial advantage, so that their employees are more productive, their employees are more committed, their employees are living a better life, they're less stressed, and to use that and then make it work so that we can leverage out of that experience.
Right.
So yes, we want to come in and work with those employees, and it's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for your company.
Right.
And let us do it. And then that allows us to build the course and the structure and populate the framework so that we can roll that out on a larger scale.
Irma had identified some other reasons why the pharmaceutical industry was, even though they don't want to stop selling their pills, they are under the gun for a lot of other reasons to be on the side of wellness. Irma?
And yet they're slow to adopt other technologies like digital therapeutics and perhaps these wellness programs because, perhaps inertia, perhaps just they're so steep, that's their business, is developing drugs and pharmaceuticals. But inevitably, I think they're coming around to an idea of digital therapeutics and perhaps at some point to this concept as well.
For a long term.
Yeah, I mean, they in a way, they need to have new initiatives to counteract some of the most recent negative news regarding opioids, etc. But on the other hand, it makes them kind of afraid and maybe skittish to hitch their wagon to something else that might not pan out well for them.
And the last year, we talked to Johnson & Johnson, we talked to Pfizer. I'm not sure Pfizer was there. We are now in touch with Bristol Myers Squibb and Novartis and Teva, which is very much part of you this year.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide. This gives a view that we did for a pharmaceutical company of the professional selling skills and how that boomed. And now we're going to insert personal lifestyle skills for their own employees, and we will be able to use the same development and delivery capability that we already have in place and they already recognize for their own employees as an employee benefit, and see the possibility that when they say try diet and exercise, that maybe there's something that they could then help spread it. The other part of it is that the framework is very elaborate. I'll show you a slide a little bit later. That we can build a health employee learning platform that takes the instructional design and development and delivery and proof of concept process and builds an architecture for people and for technology that will provide a go-between. So let's go to the next slide. So we think that there's a big market, as we explained on the slide, diet and exercise, employer benefit of patient and family wellness, goodwill with government and health providers, offer the program for their sales reps and become the advocates when they meet with the physicians. In the future, there's possibility of the sales reps to offer pharmaceutical products and lifestyle training as well. And employers, whether it's a medical school, a nursing unit, it could go to everyone in there, including the primary care physician, who would have a better framework than just a linear questionnaire to have conversations with the patient. And we're developing technology that will allow us to transcribe automatically that conversation within the framework and give a report right away to each patient about what happened in that 1 hour meeting. And taking all the load off the patient, off the physician of writing up. Next slide. And what we're looking to do is to get $100,000 projects with each company to train 100 people the first time around. It costs $100,000 to recruit one dementia patient. Next slide. So what we want to go for our personal lifestyle skills. We want to go for the Health Employee Learning Platform. Next slide. We are in touch with Haven HealthCare, with Atul Gawande. I met Joanne Jenkins here, and one of our directors, who was executive dean of the University of Phoenix, is pursuing the rest of his life to work on lifelong learning for health and longevity. We have many, many opportunities, but we're now at the point where your opportunities for designing healthy habits and better outcomes to improve health span of humanity through connected health is, we see this upcoming conference as our big opportunity.